France 24. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate, a special Thursday edition after, in part one, witnessing Cyril Vanier and Cyril Rousseau's report embedded with the first, what is it, a battalion or a...
That's right, it's a battalion. The first battalion to pull out of Afghanistan.
The first battalion to pull out of Afghanistan. Thank you, Cyril. The first battalion to pull out of Afghanistan, and we're talking about it with Afghanistan's ambassador to France, Assad Omer. Also with us, Alain Lamballe, former French military attaché in India and Pakistan, who now works with the ASI-21 group Futurible think tank, and Guillaume Lascangerias of the French Military Academy's Institute for Strategic Research. He's a military historian. Just before the break, Alain Lamballe posing the question of what happens next. Of course, we can see images perhaps of a suicide car bombing in front of a local police chief's office in Tuesday in Lashkar Gah. Cyril, in those are the latest images from this Tuesday. You were in Afghanistan, last week? Mm-hmm. What was it? How volatile was it? We heard a tiny spattering of gunfire in that report. Fortunately, the last patrol of that unit went well in terms of there were no casualties. But how volatile is it where you were?
It's interesting, actually, that you should mention Lashkar Gah right now, because we were just 20 kilometers north of Lashkar Gah. But obviously, the way that the military units are divided, you have a very, very specific sector that you deal with, and you only know what happens in your 20 kilometers. So I wasn't aware of what was going on at Lashkar Gah. The reason that the unit I followed was deployed seemingly in the middle of nowhere was actually precisely to take the pressure off the two big towns that were next to the area we were, including Lashkar Gah. In other words, try and prevent Taliban from getting to Lashkar Gah and setting off bombs as they were doing there.
Are you saying, in other words, that the mere presence of these Marines in a rural area draws heat from the Taliban, who then leave the cities to try to engage with them, as they say militarily?
Well, it's interesting. When one of the first things I was told when I met the Marines was when the Taliban see that uniform, that pixelated camouflage uniform that is specific to the Marines, they shoot. They go and they shoot. That's what the Marines told me when we went out on patrol. So it does seem also that the villagers echo the sentiment that the Taliban will actually fixate themselves sometimes in areas where the Marines are.
Hence the fact that they were saying go away to the...
Right, and the Taliban will follow. However, I think we shouldn't get things entirely the wrong way around. The reason the Marines went into that area in the first place was because there was a Taliban presence there, and not the other way around.
Guillaume Lascangerias, I want to bring up another point that we saw in that report, that towards the end of it, where they're doing the inventory and they're trying to account for everything. The U.S. Army is a huge endeavor. How do you draw down?
It always has been a huge army, much more focused on deployment of logistics than fighters. I mean, when you see those soldiers in the main battle line, in the main front line, it seems you see only the most part of the emerged part of the iceberg, because the U.S. Army always have been trading for material and for blood. I mean, back to the 1860s in the Civil War, where they suffered the most heavy losses of their whole military history, they tried to change the focusing on the main front line, so they can spare human life. And with that, for example, they focus on logistics, deployment. You see guns, you see machine guns, you see helicopters, you see jet fighters. So they want to do the best to spare the lives of the soldiers.
It sounds very costly.
Yes, it is.
If I may just interject, I believe it's just one factoid. I believe that for every soldier that you see out on patrol, as we did in the report, there are about 7, 8, 9, 10 guys, Marines, back at battalion headquarters who are not actually out patrolling and fighting. They're taking care of the equipment, the logistics, the resupplies, and all that.
Yeah, I think logistics is too big. I mean, in the American army, you can lose a war not only on the ground, but you can lose a war because of logistics. And the Americans in Afghanistan, they have a lot of problems because of logistics. They have to bring their equipment, their material through Pakistan, and we know that through Pakistan it becomes very dangerous now. The convoys are being attacked more and more. There are mainly 2 points to cross the border, Chaman in Balochistan and west of Peshawar, Torkham. So they have a lot of problems because many convoys are attacked. So now they are trying to bring equipment from the north, but it's very long and very costly too, through Russia and through the 3 Central Asian states which have a common border with Afghanistan. But the Russians can ask the price they want. They say, okay, you can cross our territory, but you have to pay. And I think the Americans, anyway, if they wanted to stay, they would have lose logistically apart from losing on the ground.
If you permit, there was a saying short after Vietnam War, and McNamara used to say to
the former defense minister.
Yeah, the former defense minister said, "Never get involved in a land war in Asia." So, and Afghanistan is in the middle of Asia and is much more failure, and it's the problem with logistics.
And so we see now the beginning of that drawdown, and it's not looking, at least not at this point, like the Afghans are going to sort it all on their own. Not when you see, for instance, the man in charge of negotiations with the Taliban, the former president, Burhanuddin Rabbani, was murdered in a suicide blast 9 days ago.
This is what I want to say to Pakistan's ISI, that with such threats, such actions and such crimes, you cannot weaken the determination nor the resolve of Afghans.
The blame on Pakistan's notorious ISI intelligence service, an accusation, by the way, repeated in Washington last week by the chair of Barack Obama's outgoing Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's furious over the September 13th coordinated bombings of the U.S. Embassy in Kabul and also that of NATO headquarters there.
The Haqqani Network, for one, acts as a veritable arm of Pakistan's Internal Services Intelligence Agency. With ISI support, Haqqani operatives planned and conducted that truck bomb attack, as well as the assault on our embassy. We also have credible intelligence that they were behind the June 28th attack on the Intercontinental Hotel in Kabul and a host of other smaller but effective operations. They may believe that by using these proxies, they are hedging their bets or redressing what they feel is an imbalance in regional power. But in reality, they have already lost that bet. By exporting violence, they've eroded their internal security and their position in the region.
An extremely blunt accusation. Ambassador, before I ask you to react to that, tell us again, what's the Haqqani Network?
Yeah, Haqqani Network is saying that they're really not a big number of people, but there is a network. They are really notorious to kill people, to kill, destroy schools, and, clinics, and all that. And now we know more and more. For example, as you referred to those suicide bomber in Kabul, whatever lately we have a suicide bombing or a fighting, we trace almost in the same area, which is unfortunately other side of our border.
Are you surprised that the outspoken words we just heard by Admiral Mike Mullen?
No, we are not surprised. Actually, we are saying that for quite some time. And actually, this morning, our national security advisor, Dr. Spanta, said that we probably need to re-examine our dealing, our peace process that we are about to think about it. And I would like to add something, that the Taliban has no territory now. They are unable to confront Afghan army. They are unable to confront, of course, NATO armies. So what they are doing, they've resorted to do this kind of action, suicide bombing, and really isolated terrorist acts. And here, that's really changing their tactics.
But that's enough, by the way. That's enough to disrupt a country and governance in an entire country or entire regions. They don't have to be as numerous as the coalition forces. They don't have to have the same weapons, or they don't have to be as skilled in fighting. As I said, in the particular report and region that we followed, there were about 1,000 Marines and about 100 Taliban. You would expect the Marines to win, right? Except the rules of war, it's not conventional warfare. It's guerrilla warfare. And that is enough to disrupt an entire area and to disrupt the daily lives of the villagers and to force the villagers out of their homes.
Yeah, yeah. For that, for example, because we are tracing what Mr. Mullen saying that we have traced that another country.
When you say
So
that this means a re-examination of the way the peace process is going, what do you mean?
we mean that we have opened all doors for the negotiation with those Talibans that they would like to run, but now we see there is no result. We have not received any positive response from other side of border. Though now we are thinking maybe to change that, to discuss with the government of Pakistan probably, and we know that all the problems comes from there.
Are you saying that you're reviewing your relationship with Islamabad?
No, not the reviewing relationship, but this process, peace process.
Alain Lambert.
The problem is that it is very difficult to fight against militants who have bases outside of the country. And that is precisely what happens in Afghanistan. The Haqqani and also the so-called Afghan Taliban, they have bases in the tribal areas. To talk about the Haqqani network, they are mainly based in North Waziristan, which is a very rugged area where I've been actually.
Which is inside the Pakistani border.
It is on the border. It is one of the tribal agencies, and it has got a border with Afghanistan. These people, they are based there, they can rest there, they can prepare their raids there, and they cross the border, and they fight against the Americans, against the British, against the Afghan armies. That's the main problem. And the Pakistani, in fact, they recognize they have strong links with the Haqqani. They don't say that they are helping the Haqqani, of course, to make attacks, but however, they support them. And they refuse to act against them in their area in North Waziristan. They refuse. So the Haqqani, they are free to act as they want, actually, Haqqani network.
And some say that there's a lot of resentment over the fact that the U.S. carried out that raid to kill Osama bin Laden without any Pakistani help. The bad blood between Islamabad and Washington sparking anti-U.S. demonstrations like these in the images we can show you from Karachi and Lahore this week, protests, and also at times some pointed jibes from the Pakistani government.
Haqqani network Pakistan की पैदावार नहीं है. It was trained and produced by CIA. Of course, हमने उस वक्त मदद की, लेकिन आप 20 साल पीछे न जाएं.
All right, Raymond Malik there, the Interior Minister, alluding to the days when everybody was fighting against the Soviets.
Yeah, it, as a matter of fact, is kind of a very, very cultural process that is very interesting to see that most of the Occidental forces have been forging their future or their soon-to-be enemies. I would say like Israel did with the Hamas instead of discussing with the OLP,
with the PLO.
And it's the same with the CIA, building the networks of mujahideen to fight against the Soviets. But it doesn't explain everything, and it doesn't explain the very particular status of these FADA areas, so these federal administrative tribal areas, so-called in Waziristan, Baluchistan, and those works as safe havens. And for the 20 last years, it was always a safe haven.
And the United States putting pressure on Islamabad, is that going to bear fruit?
It's always hard to forecast because it may work. It may. No one knows what Pakistan will do because they always consider Afghanistan being their strategic depth, and they don't want to change that.
Let's take a look now at some of the comments about what's going to happen in the future. You're saying it's tough to predict. On the France 24 Debate Facebook page, James from Bakara in Malta says, as soon as occupational forces do finally leave, we will see the Taliban enter the country en force and ruthlessly take over without much resistance from the Afghan forces. That's his prediction. Andrew says, why doesn't the UN liaise with neighboring countries about redrawing the borders of Afghanistan? Would this help diffuse the ethnic tensions within the current Afghan state? Everything else has failed. Would Iran and Pakistan cooperate with border changes? If the UN can create South Sudan out of Sudan, why not something similar for Afghanistan? Ambassador, maybe I can get you to respond to that.
No, I mean, that's, I was thinking, Pakistan existed just after Second World War, and we didn't have really a big problem with them in that area. No, I think that's hypothetical. We say that really Pakistan can intervene, can stop those as you said, rightly safe havens, and that we have identified the problems, really, where problems are. And we say that stability in Afghanistan, peaceful Afghanistan, stable Afghanistan, is in the interest of Pakistan in the region. And that's we're saying it all the time. And I think many Pakistanis understand that also, that a peaceful Afghanistan, stable Afghanistan is good for our economic development in the region. We have a lot of things to exploit and to do in that region.
Very briefly, because we're almost out of time, Alain Ombal.
For sure, Pakistan does not want to fight on both fronts, on the Indian front and on the Afghan front. They need to have a friendly regime, a friendly government in Kabul, whoever he is. I mean, it may be, a moderate, it may be Taliban's, according to their own wishes, maybe, but they definitely want a friendly regime in Kabul.
One final word, Cyril Vanier. Morale. I know you said that you were embedded with a very unit in a very specific place. How did you feel that morale was? Has the surge worked?
To be honest, most Marines are more concerned about their specific timetable. It's the end of a 6 or 7 month deployment. That's what they're looking at. They're going to be holding their wife in their arms a couple weeks from now. That's what they're looking at.
And speaking of timetables, you'll be going to the U.S. next.
That's correct. They should be arriving in about 3 weeks from now in the U.S., and we'll be greeting them there.
All right. We'll get the follow-up then, the second part of that, reporters to come. Thanks for that, Cyril Vanier. We want to thank Alain Ombal for joining us, Guillaume Lascondarias, and Ambassador Assad Omer for being with us. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate. And by the way, this Friday, we're going to be having what's called a Google Plus Hangout. We're going to be discussing the issue of that trader who said that basically that greed is good. It's been causing a big stir. You can join us at 2 p.m. for that Google Plus Hangout. The details on the France 24 World This Week Facebook page. Stay with us. Business is next.